Hi, this is SDecker, going to go over some of the videos that we watched this week and analysis. Just wanted to let you know, been kind of a rough week for me personally, and I'm actually fighting off the third day of a migraine now, and this was the clearest day that I had, so I wanted to go ahead and try to get the video done so that I could get it into you. Looking at the first video, the 6th grade students are identifying a religious leader and exploring how that leader might use social media in order to interact with their followers. So as an example, would Moses use Instagram or Facebook? Would Muhammad do a radio address? It was really an interesting idea for a lesson. However, once you got into the video, you could see the students were actually really struggling with what was a fairly complicated assignment. To the teacher's credit, though, he recognized that they had a lot of questions, especially related to exactly how they should perform the task. So he made it a point to stop, notice the students were struggling, and go back and explain each individual direction point. This is so important for us to understand as teachers, to stop and actually understand when our classes are getting off task. There's an argument to be made as to whether his initial directions were unclear or clear or not, but he did take the time to stop and walk them back through, which is a key factor and strength that all of us as teachers need to know. The YouTube video of the 8th grade social studies, the teacher seems really uncomfortable going over the slides with the students and makes what I would say is a classic teacher error of getting stuck at the front of the classroom. One of the best things that we can do as teachers, if we're going to do slide/lecture style notes, is to get out in the classroom among our students. I cannot tell you how many times walking slowly through the crowd, I've caught my students either doodling or getting off course, or maybe even writing down questions that they had, and I was able to stop and address those. It's a great skill to learn and a solid reminder for me to not allow myself to get stuck at the front of the classroom. The third video was a sample ed TPA video for social studies. It was a pre-service teacher working with a pretend classroom made up of college students. Had students discussed, but they really didn't do anything with it, and then had them work in selected groups. The questions I had were, why these groups? How will you assess everyone with this? How can all students be held accountable? One of the things that comes to mind for me is I use regularly a collaboration rubric so that students know up front, here are the expectations for you as an individual within this group. Here's what is expected of you when it comes to collaboration. And by giving that to them up front and something for them to reference to, it lets them know how I'm going to grade them with that particular group work. The next two videos are connected with what we call See, Wonder, Think, analytical interpreting non-print text. It gives students an analytical structure to accomplish a task, in this case, using Greek art to actually interpret Greek mythology. So looking at a statue of Athena with the bow and how the statue is set and what kind of accessories the statue may have that gives them clues to the Greek mythology. It's a great way and a really fun way to take something artistic and link it back to something that sometimes students find boring, of just reading old stories about old civilizations. So really neat combination of strategies there. Students need to be taught the skills they need to accomplish these tasks directly. In other words, how am I going to use this to connect that? When you do that as a teacher, it helps sharpen their analytical skills and pushes them even further. Then finally, so many different ways to assess a student. In the video, students are performing monologues to present their research about a specific Greek god or goddess. Let's be honest, it's a lot easier just to make up a 50-question multiple choice test and give it to our students. It's harder to come up with things like discussion, performance, and this in this case with monologues, constructed responses, presentations, interviews. I even let my students one time make their own magazine where they told the story of what we had learned all year through a series of articles. It was hard and it was a lot of work, and yes, it took a whole lot longer to grade than a multiple choice test. But you know what? My students who are graduating this year are still talking about that project. Quizzes and tests have their place, but rarely do they ask students to demonstrate a specific skill. overall, it was really just nice to see some other teachers doing their thing and know that sometimes there are ways that I'm doing things that are really good, and others there are things that I could do better.